Dear President Chue, fellow professors and deans of the faculty, vice presidents, and especially to you, members of the incoming class of freshmen, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you all. It is excellent to return to Kyung-hee once again. I'm honored to be able to share my thoughts with you about this important topic, education and the future of humankind. I must begin by first, like President Chue, congratulating the incoming class. You have just crossed one of the great borderlines of your life. You have entered a new chapter in the story of your own education, perhaps the most important chapter of your entire life. Now, a fully rounded human person is, of course, being educated all through his or her long life. We speak, don't we, of kindergarten education, of childhood education, of high school and grammar school education, of graduate education, of professional degree education, of adult education, even of education classes for retired people. If you want to pursue it, education never stops. So why then did I say that this next chapter, the chapter of your undergraduate education, is perhaps the most important chapter of your lives? I have to confess to you, ladies and gentlemen, that when I reread the text of today's lecture just 24 hours ago, I wondered if I didn't sound like the great but always somber epistle writer, the renowned Christian apostle St. Paul. In one of his epistles, that is, in one of his letters to the flock, he writes, "When I was a child, I acted like a child, I behaved like a child, I thought like a child. But now I am a man, I must act like a man, behave like a man, and think like a man." Well, let me tell you, today this Professor Paul is not going to get as serious as Saint Paul on such a joyful and special afternoon. But I do have a reason for my argument, and it goes like this. The reason is that what is now expected of you here at Kyung-hee, and of what you must strive to do, has changed in its very nature of your development. It has changed, or it asks you to change, in how you must think. It has changed in the nature of the questions you must ask and in the method of your search to the answers to these questions. It has changed really in the ordering of your mind, because only with a differently ordered mind can you reach the altogether different and much higher levels of education and understanding. Let me explain that a bit further. For each chapter of education in our lives, we have different expectations, different things you need to get achieved, different purposes your teachers and professors expect from you. Just think back for a moment to your own childhood. Kindergarten education is really about learning how to socialize, how to interact with other little children, how to share. And then it is also about beginning to learn how to read, how to count, how to draw, how to speak a full sentence. For some of you, it's perhaps about your first Suzuki violin lessons, your first ball games, your first team games. As you become 8 and 10 years old, and then 14 and 16 years old, it's about much more learning. Learning languages, learning computers, learning sciences. But an awful lot of this education, I think you will admit it, is repetition learning. It's recognition learning. It's learning to pass examinations which are testing the database you have acquired, which you have studied. It is about trying so hard to get the exact answer to an exact question. In the subjects you have mainly been studying, that is quite right. There is only one exact answer to a mathematical problem. 2 plus 2 equals 4. There is no other proper answer. Similarly, there are no 2 or 3 ways of spelling a word in the French language. So you must learn what is the exactly correct answer. Now, the same is true, if you think about it, of many later education stages. If you're training to be an orthopedic doctor or nurse, you must know exactly all the bones in the human body and all the blood vessels. If you are training to be a civil engineer, you have to become a professional regarding exact stress weights, exact lengths of steel girders, exact levels of tolerance. If you are not a professional and exact about it, you are a bad civil engineer. If again later in life you decide you want to learn the Italian language so as to understand the words and meanings of the text of Verdi and Rossini's operas, you have once more to learn exactly. The years of your undergraduate education will allow some of you, indeed I hope all of you, the chance to grasp at a very different form of thinking. I mean by saying you have crossed a watershed, you have entered a new chapter. What is the different form of thinking? Thinking about uncertainty. Thinking about moral choices and philosophy. Thinking about what makes a certain book a great novel. Not a good novel, not a normal one, but a great novel. Thinking about difficult political choices. Thinking about war and peace. Thinking about alternative economic policies. Thinking about the lessons of history. All of this, you see, is grappling with inexact topics. Grappling with alternative answers. Grappling with in-between answers rather than the absolute good and the absolute bad. This is not so easy, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, it is much harder than learning about how to build supercomputers, because it is learning about human beings who are the most complicated things that live on this earth. Of course, by coming to university to acquire your bachelor's degree or equivalent, you will not cease your accumulation of data education. You will most likely do more foreign language study, more computer training, more technical work. That is all very good. But think about this a minute. You can do more language training at a language school. You can do more accountancy and accounting classes at an evening accountancy program. You can do more computing at a big commercial computing and word processing school, which have their own educational courses. You can do more hotel management learning within a big hotel chain. So you didn't come to university to get that sort of additional knowledge only. You came to university, and I know President Chue hopes you came to university for something else. You came here to begin, and I stress begin, to learn about how to interpret human nature. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why universities were invented in the first place. The overall idea of acquiring knowledge is not an especially Western Christian one. So many of the great cultures of the past, the Confucian, the Jewish, the Greco-Roman, have revered and emphasized the importance of education for its own sake. Yet education was not only to nourish the individual mind, but it was also to help to explain to us humans our bewildering, complex, and yet wonderful world. It was about analytical knowledge, which is the element that distinguishes the human species from all other species on this planet. I will speak to the translators here and say, I just thought of an idea which is not in the text you are using. Let me go back to that sentence. It was about analytical knowledge, which is the element that distinguishes the human species from all other species on this planet. Think about it. Elephants don't study foreign languages. Sheep don't do computing. Fish don't write philosophy books. Hawks don't do history. All of these analytical tools, organizing, counting, understanding, they're us, human beings. But knowledge is not like an apple dangling on the branch of a tree. Knowledge needs to be transmitted from one generation to another. Knowledge needs to be advanced into the future. And the best way that is done is through that unique institution, the university, and by the people who teach there, and the people who are educated there, yourselves. The first of the modern recognizable universities are actually about 750 years old. A Bologna in Italy, Oxford, Krakow in Poland, Salamanca in Spain, Prague. What did they do? They created disciplines. Theology, philosophy, logic, mathematics, physics. They invented professors. They established schools or departments. They created the first syllabi, that is, a body of knowledge to be taught to the students. But especially they established the university method of discourse, of controlled experiment, of scholarly argument, of research, of careful thought, of examination, of training, of teaching how to think. This is what all universities do or should do, whether it is Bologna or Oxford or Yale or CUNY. At first, I warn you, students will not find it easy. You will be asked to read an economics text in favor of free markets, and another economics text in favor of more controlled markets. And you will look to the professor and say, "What is right?" And the professor will look to you and his answer will be, "You must figure that out and explain why." You will be given readings about absolute pacifism, never going to war. And as opposed to that, other readings about the need for national defense. And you will ask your professor, "What is correct?" And your professor will say, "You tell me." To get used to answering those hard questions is the greatest gift that a university can give to you. Not a new language, not a new software application, but to getting used to understanding our complicated human condition and our complicated outside world. Therefore, President Chue, I would like to make one further very important point. Knowledge that is wisely taught and wisely imbibed is a force for good. It matters not whether it is knowledge about history or foreign cultures or human biology or public health or the environment. But on the other hand, knowledge that is distorted by prejudice, by inaccuracy and false method, by racist prejudices and a lack of open analysis, that is likely to have bad effects. Students like yourselves come to your university excited, curious, and quite frightened. At least I was frightened when I came to Newcastle University at the age of 18. It is the task of a university, chiefly of its professors, to respond to students' feelings, to train them how to think better, how to ask the right questions, how to gather and analyze data, how to put an argument together, how to distinguish proper knowledge from fake knowledge. When universities do that well, they have fulfilled the expectations which a society ought to ask of them. More than that, when universities do that well, they give hope for the future of humankind. 100 years ago, that great British scholar and novelist, H.G. Wells, said that the 20th century would be a race between education and catastrophe. Education and catastrophe. He hoped education would win, but he was, alas, wrong. Exactly 100 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, the incoming classes at Oxford and Cambridge and Paris and Berlin universities, the classes of the year 1910 to 1911, were starting their education. 3 years later, in 1914, they graduated and marched into the First World War. Reason and balance and mutual understanding had been pushed aside by warlike technologies, nationalist and racist thought, and bad, embittered, prejudiced knowledge. It is the task of everyone in today's much more extended university world and much larger knowledge world. It is the task of the university professors, the presidents, the deans, and of the students, and of all who have had in past years received a college education, to make sure that we understand our human condition, our uncertainties, our weaknesses as well as our strengths, much better this time round for the 21st century. Our future and the future of those who follow us depends upon it. The future of humankind does rest upon education more than upon anything else. Professor Inwan Chue, Mr. President, I thank you.